Alan here with another 5 minutes of recovery. As always, quick disclaimer, I'm not a professional speaker. I don't represent any specific 12-step fellowship. I'm just here sharing my experience, strength, and hope, in the hopes that maybe that someone that's suffering from addiction will see one of my videos and seek help, because there is help and there's hope. As always, if a guy like me could get and stay sober on a daily basis, there's no reason why anybody that watches any of these videos can't do exactly the same thing. So if you have a problem, you think you have a problem, go to your local hospital. There's plenty, they're connected with detoxes and rehabs, and just know that there's a way out. For a really long time, I didn't think that there was a way out. And I continued to live my life the way that I did, and I continue to show up in places like jails and institutions, and I didn't know that I could live another way. I didn't know. I thought that there was something wrong with me, right? That maybe I was different. I didn't understand how other people could do life on life's terms, and I just couldn't do it. And it wasn't because I wasn't brought up right. Like, I was brought up in an upper middle class family with values and morals, but I just never really fit in. I always felt different. I believe now, I know now that I suffered from low self-esteem and low self-worth. I always thought that I was a piece of crap and I wasn't worthy. And I didn't know how other people could do life, and I couldn't. It didn't make sense to me. And then what happened is I found a drink, and I picked up the drink, and all of a sudden I felt like I could be a part of. I finally felt like I was a part of everything that was going on around me, that I understood it. I wasn't shy anymore. I could talk to you. Like, in the beginning, it boosted my self-esteem and it boosted my self-worth. And then, of course, like with everything else, experiment with drugs. I started with smoking a little pot here and there, and then in the neighborhood where I grew up, I was seeking to be accepted. So I would hang out with older guys, and then I would do the things that they were doing, and one thing led to another, and it just continued to get worse. And I didn't understand. I didn't know that it was getting worse while it was getting worse. And so what winds up happening is, we fast forward, I start getting in trouble with the law, and showing up in juvenile detentions, and my parents don't know what to do with me because I'm out of control. And so the system takes over, and they start putting me in different kinds of institutions to try to give me help. And I could always remember, like, being really uncomfortable in my own skin. Even like when I was incarcerated and I couldn't get high and I couldn't drink, I was so uncomfortable, and I couldn't wait until I could get out of that place so that I could go back to doing what I was doing. You know what I mean? And so what would happen is, I found that I could do really well in structured environments. That if you gave me some rules and told me what to do, that I would do it, and I would do it as best as I possibly could, so that way I could get out of wherever I was as soon as possible. And then I would get out, and I didn't have the discipline to structure my life on the outside, and I would go back to what I only knew, and I would start drinking and drugging again. And for a really long time, like, that was my solution. I didn't understand I didn't understand about drugs and alcohol being a problem. I knew that it worked for me, right? Until it didn't. And so the disease is cunning, baffling, and powerful, and it's progressive, and it gets worse over time. It doesn't get better, and like, that's been my experience. And so I turned to an adult. I started showing up. I went from juvenile detentions to county jails and to state prisons. And I got to tell you, like, I wasn't a violent criminal. I'm not a violent person. I was the kind of guy that would steal your wallet and help you look for it, right? And I wasn't a very good thief either, so I got caught obviously a number of times, and I started to build a record. And before you know it, I start showing up in front of judges with this record, and they start sending me to state prisons. And so I don't know, I probably was introduced to a 12-step program, I'm gonna say, as my first adult incarceration. I was incarcerated and I had a 10-year indeterminate sentence, which was considered a youthful offender sentence because I was 21. And I went to this prison. It was a youth correctional facility, and I spent 31 months there. And I like I said, I do really well in structured environments, so I did everything they told me to do, and I made parole. And as I was leaving and walking out, I never forget the lady counselor said, "Alan, you need to go to 12-step meeting today when you leave, like today." And for some reason I heard her, and that night I went to my first 12-step meeting. It was February 4th of 1991. I remember that date because that's the first time that I ever was released from somewhere that I didn't think it was time to celebrate, and I didn't drink and I didn't drug. And I went to that meeting, and it was also the first place that I ever felt comfortable in a room full of other people. Like, I was still uncomfortable very much in my own skin, but though the people in that room welcomed me, and it was the beginning of my journey of learning about what the 12 steps were about. Back then I wasn't willing to work the steps because by this point in my addiction, I just really believed that drugs and alcohol was a problem, and that if I'm not doing drugs and alcohol, then there's no more problem, right? And so I thought I could handle the rest of my life just fine, thank you. And I did do some of the things that they told me to do: 90 meetings in 90 days, get a sponsor, join a group. And then my sponsor started talking about working steps, and I was like, yeah, I think maybe that's good for you, but I'm good. And he said some other things like no relationships for the first year. And I was like, well, I was just in jail for the last 2.5, so I don't think that really applies to me. And so there was some things that I just didn't understand that over time I've come to understand that he just had my best interest at heart. But because I wasn't willing to work any steps and I wasn't willing to really take his suggestions and take his advice, eventually, like, I got into a relationship, and when it didn't work out, I picked up a drink, and the drink led to a drug, and then I woke up in jail. And like, we could just do that over and over and over again, because that was my life. But every time since that first time that I went to that first meeting, every time I was released from any institution, I always went back to the 12-step meeting. And the reason why is because there was hope. You know what I mean? And I remember that hope. And at one point in my life, it got to the point where I was desperate enough to want to do something different, and I decided I was going to do what they told me to do, and I did. And as a result, my life started to change drastically. And I like to tell you that, like, I stayed sober from that day on, but that's not the case. So I'm a little hard-headed. So, and also, we work this stuff a day at a time, and if we stop working it, we immediately start to backpedal. So I truly believe that either I'm moving forward or I'm moving backward. There's no standing still in this. So fast forward, I go through the step process with a sponsor, and I get a job, I keep a job, I get a wife, I get a family, and like, my life is really good. And somewhere I got a connection with a God of my understanding, right? And some things happened in my life, and I started to get a resentment about that, with that God. And I stopped praying, and I stopped meditating, and I stopped doing all of those things that I was doing. And I didn't just get struck drunk or high. You know, like, it didn't happen like that. It took 6 months of me backpedaling before I finally was in a place where I was in so much pain, I thought that I really didn't have any other choice but to pick up a drink or a drug, and I did. And you know the story, like, same thing over and over again. I wake up 30, 45 days later, and I'm in jail. And like, how did I get here, right? And I'm hopeless, and I want to die, and I blew up my family, and I screwed up so many different things, and I didn't think I was ever going to be able to get out of it. And I wound up being incarcerated for a couple of years. And then I got out, and I jumped right back in. And the people that were part of my support network before were part of my support network the whole time I was incarcerated, and they continued to support me when I got out. And so I jumped back in. I went through the steps again with my sponsor. I started practicing the principles in all my affairs, and my life got pretty good pretty quick. And I stayed sober for 4 years. The first time it was 5 years, and this time I stayed sober for 4 years. And I woke up one day, and I don't know like what happened, but all of a sudden like something was missing again. Like I wasn't connecting to the source. Like I wasn't praying like I used to pray, and I started looking for outside things to make me feel good again, instead of working on the inside out. And as a result of that, I found the casino. And if you're an addict like me, like you get addicted to anything. And I found really quickly that I didn't have to put a drink or a drug in me to wake up to disease and to be completely active. And so like I won a bunch of money, and then I lost a bunch of money, and over a period of time I lost everything that I owned, and I was ready to like kill myself, and I thought it would be a better idea to pick up a drink than to crash my truck into a tree. And that's what I did. And I didn't just wake up in jail that time. That's not my experience. So it took a year of suffering in and out of rehabs, detoxes, until I burnt my insurance up to the point that like I couldn't use it for anything. They were recommending state facilities. And finally I went to the casino one night, and I had smashed my truck up earlier that day, and I thought it was a good idea to steal a car from the casino, the same truck that I had. I don't know what I was thinking. Did it on camera. Wasn't long, I drove it down the highway into the guardrail a couple of times, pulled over, and like waited for the cops. And I don't know that I waited for them because I was done and I was willing to surrender. I just think I waited for them because like I was completely lost and out of my mind and didn't know what to do, right? And so I got arrested, and fast forward, I'm in jail and I'm hopeless again, and I'm getting ready to go for sentencing, and I got my support network in court with me, and there's a program trying to get me into a program and all of these different things. And the judge, I never forget, he looked at me and he said, there's a really good chance that you're gonna do exactly the same thing if I let you out. He said, but then there's the hope that maybe you'll do something different. And I'm gonna go with hope today. And he gave me a county sentence and a really lot of probation, and told me good luck. And I got to tell you that day, that was the day that I decided that I would be willing to do whatever is necessary to get and stay sober. And from that day to this, I haven't found it necessary to pick up a drink or a drug. And my life has gotten tremendously better, right? But it's not always great. But the thing that I would like to share is that like it's a different life, right? Like, so the steps and the connection with the God of my understanding, which the steps gave me, has transformed my life into something that I never thought was possible. I'd like to think that I'm a successful business owner. I have a family that cares and loves me, and that I love them. I'm able to be of service to other people and not look for anything in return. And like, that's the opposite. Like, I wouldn't do anything for you if you didn't have anything for me. And as a result of just trying to do this a day at a time, like, and just trying to be of help and be grateful for the things that I have in my life, my life continues to get better. Like, and that's the hope. And the only way that I could have ever got there is by giving myself a chance. Right? And maybe it's taken me quite some time to get to the point where I'm at. Like, you just heard the story that I told you, right? But the point is that I needed to get to a place where I finally understood that I was worthy and that I deserved good things in my life, and that I was willing to work to get to that point in my life. And as a result of doing that, it's not as hard as we think. Like, that's the biggest thing that I'd also like to give you. Like, I was so full of fear. My life was run by so much fear that I thought that I thought that I would never be able to do this because I was just so scared. And come to find out that when I start to do it a little bit, a day at a time, that it wasn't as fearful as I thought, and it wasn't as hard as I thought. And being on the other side and being able to maintain my sobriety on a daily basis is like, one of the greatest gifts. Another gift, and I may be anybody that has a problem with addiction can identify this, is like my mind has finally gotten quiet. Like when I go to sleep at night, I say some prayers and I close my eyes and I go to sleep, right? And I'm out. Like I don't run scenarios in my head. I don't have these like opposing forces in my head driving me crazy 24/7. And like that's a gift, like being able to experience that peace. And I feel worthy. Like I have self-esteem because I do esteemable things. I try to be of service to people today. And besides my business, like I do things and don't want anything in return. The reason why I do that is because the more that I do that and the less that I think of self, the more that I gain and the better I get. And like this is just like it's a daily reprieve based on our spiritual condition. So if you think you got a problem, please reach out, seek help, go to your local hospital. There's detoxes, there's plenty of organizations out there. Just like reach out. Like you could get sober and you could stay sober. Like you listen to the story that I just told you. Like, and if I could get and stay sober on a daily basis, everybody can. So I hope I said something that helped somebody today. I hope that you'll see my video and you'll take a chance and seek some help and give yourself a chance at a different kind of life. And as always, if you like my videos, please like, subscribe, share my content. Let's get this out to as many people as possible. And with that, thanks guys. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next video.